going to go straight to the camera. Go ahead, start us off.
How do you usually start off?
We say, welcome! Let's go! Dude. Hey, welcome to another episode of Conspiracies and Mysteries. And tonight, we're putting trust over here. Troy in the captain's chair. And Troy, what is tonight's topic?
Well, we're going to talk about reincarnation.
Yes.
And, it's something that it's a big subject. I mean, it takes a little bit of different things, but mostly it's you have to have kind of a broad imagination, or at least an open mind.
I definitely agree with you on that.
Reincarnation, and it depends on what religion you are, or even if you're not religious, it may mean something else. But in Hinduism, the belief that the eternal non-physical soul takes on a new physical body after death cycle is called samsara, driven by karma, which is the consequences of past actions. The soul continues to reincarnate until it attains moksha, the liberation from this cycle, which is 7 rebirths. So I guess you go through 7, different phases until you get to maybe the 7th heaven, I guess. So Buddhism, there's no self or no soul. Okay, rebirth is not a static soul transferring to a new body, but rather a continuation of a casual process similar to one like a candle lighting another candle.
Okay.
Driven by karma, past lives determine the nature of the future, often involuntary, first within the 6 realms of samsara or cycles. Okay, so it sounds like a little bit from Hinduism, but apparently you have no control. This involuntary component of it, I don't know where that comes from. Okay, because I'm not a Buddhist, but the goal in Buddhism is to end this cycle of rebirth through enlightenment and reaching nirvana. Rebirth can take place in human, animal, or spiritual realms until all cravings and ignorance are removed. Okay, so I guess the thing is, how many times have you seen people in life where, you're encountering an idiot on the street? Okay, you know what I'm saying? And I mean, when I say idiot, it could be a catch-all for a lot of things, but I mean, if someone is clearly, let's say like they're treating their girlfriend like crap, or they're just nasty acting, you got to think, if you're a thinking person, you think, now wait a minute, are they on the same level of intelligence or whatever as this guy over here who is working in a food pantry? You know what I'm saying? And clearly they're not. They're not on the same level of consciousness, or something's not right. So you can almost see how this kind of works. You go through these stages till you reach nirvana, I guess. But the rebirth in Buddhism refers to the actions of the sentient being led to a new existence after death in an endless cycle called samsara. The cycle is considered to be unsatisfactory and painful. Buddhism rebirths can occur over 500 times. Now, can you imagine that?
No, definitely not, because I know with some of the stories throughout the rest of this podcast, we're isolating single incidents that I've seen so far. So to hear that, no, I could not imagine.
My goodness, man.
Yeah.
Judaism, Christianity, Islam teach one life followed by judgment or redemption, resurrection, I guess. But I'm a Christian, right? So I got looking at this as a Christian, and it says in Hebrews, it is appointed for a man to die once, and after that comes the judgment. Okay. Now here's what I thought was interesting about that. It says appointed for a man to die once, and after that comes the judgment. It doesn't say how many times you've lived in that statement.
Yeah, I definitely know when it started going towards religion, there seemed to be a lot of skepticism, nothing definitive for an explanation of reincarnation, through the Bible.
Right,
so.
Right. And now there is a part, though. I mean, did Jesus hint at reincarnation in Matthew, where he talks about John the Baptist? And then he comes back later and in that same passage, I guess, and says that he will come again as Elijah. Okay, now I've got the exact quote somewhere. I'll get to it later. But there are things that aren't mentioned in the Bible. There really are. I mean, so I don't know. But when I picked up on the fact that it didn't say how many times you've lived, you die once. Now, is this the 7 or 6, divisions of these different religions that you get to heaven? I mean, I don't know. I mean, like I said, when I see people that are clearly, I'm thinking about some of these horrific
examples. Okay,
we've had.
Yeah.
You think, well, are they going to go to the same place I'm going to go, or do they have to go? It's just like I mean, if you flunk high school, you got to go back and retake the class till you graduate, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
I mean, you just don't get a diploma and say, well, you tried.
But I can see what you're saying. I mean, if you're living this life that's here in the presence and you're witnessing what you speak of, right? And then the potential of reincarnation, you're gonna put me in the same league with these guys? Yeah, so I can see what you're talking about there.
On the short bus? What is the deal here? Anyway, we've got some interesting. There are so many stories out there, and people look this up. Make sure you get the first and last name of these people, because there were so many they didn't get a name, whatever. This happened, that happened. They use artificial intelligence to tell a story. I came across 2 people that I thought were valid. Okay, and we'll get into them, I guess, in a minute. As a matter of fact, we can get into it right now if you want.
Let's see if I can get this mouse to cooperate right here. So let's, well, I don't know if what you were just talking about 5 minutes ago, you're stuck with that guy in the same room right now because he can't operate the mouse to get over to this computer here. Never has a problem. But hey, while I'm still struggling over here, I just wanted to touch base on some of the research I did. Okay. Did you notice, outside the Buddhism, Hinduism, did you notice that a lot of these stories were based on kids? It seems like the majority of these individual isolated situations were regarding a child. Yeah. And I feel like a child trying to operate this mouse from the opposite side of the table here.
The children seem to be, it just seems like to be a spot in their lives where they remember this stuff, and then after about 6 or 7 years, the memories kind of go away,
Yeah. But in the early years, it seems like whatever they speak of, I mean, they're tuned in.
Gosh,
it's their,
I mean, this one, and we'll get to it. He has 55 verified details about the person he used to be. Okay, and this kid was just, he was a small child.
Because I got this screen here to work, I don't know if I could bounce these back and forth, but you know what? Let's, there was something you wanted to tune into right when we started. So let me get to that real fast, if I can continue to work this mouse. And here's where I'm still, here we go.
Come back to me.
Who was she?
I never saw her in my life.
What did she give you?
Oh my God.
It's a party or what? What's that some cake?
Yeah. You gotta share with us what we're seeing right there.
I was trying to come up with music for the show.
Oh, that's what it was?
And that is from one of my favorite movies, and the people out there that have seen Somewhere in Time knows exactly what I'm talking about. That movie gives me, I had goosebumps just watching it a little bit.
Well, I struggled with it because I'm not used to seeing him in anything other than Superman. Yeah, no, but I did like the music.
I did, yeah. It is great music. And it's a great show.
Then I'll have to go back and watch it.
But anyway, it deals a little bit with, maybe not so much reincarnation. I guess it does, but it also deals with time travel, which is my...
Well, it says, come back and see me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would kind of even tie that with a little deja vu. But here's one of those clips if you're ready for it.
Emerged involving a young boy named James Leininger. James seemingly possessed memories of a past life as James Houston Jr., a World War II fighter pilot who flew a Corsair off the USS Natoma Bay. What made this tale even more intriguing was the striking coincidence that Houston had been shot down precisely as James described, perishing at the tender age of 21. Adding to the intrigue, James Leininger had a birthmark in the exact location where James Houston was shot down and fatally wounded. This eerie detail adds another layer of mystery to the already astonishing story, leaving many to ponder the unexplained connections between these two individuals separated by time and circumstance. In the early 2000s, a remarkable case emerged involving a young boy named...
So this is one that I actually, when you said that you had two of them, this is actually one that I am familiar with also. And the reason why I recall this one specifically, because they talk about birthmarks. Mm-hmm. And in this particular case, he has a birthmark that, whatever word we want to use, but previously when he was a pilot, that's where they're saying he actually got shot.
Yeah. Yeah, and the kid even has like a mark.
Yeah.
In his, I think it's on his chin somewhere in here.
So that's what we were talking about. At such a young age that I heard that he was very adamant about wanting to. Is this the same one where I'm speaking of? Where I apologize, there's a couple of them, but it's similar, I guess, because of military. So if I confuse the two, let me just elaborate. Small child was talking into a language that he was this is different because he was a bomber pilot, where a kamikaze, and he flew into the ship. And as a kid, he just had the fascination with boats. He was describing his boats. He kept telling his parents, hey, I want to go see that boat. They took him to a museum. It was just a scale model. He threw a fit because, no, he wanted to see the boat, which was obviously laying, on the floor of the ocean. Right. But that's some of the research that I was doing. I was learning that a lot of these reincarnation stories that we hear have such vivid from the kids.
Yeah, that's the thing that struck me is that this phenomenon. You're dealing with kids, and I was just trying to think. How hard is it to teach a kid, let alone teach a kid to lie? Okay,
sure.
I remember when I was raising my son. I was trying to teach him to do stuff, and he was, not paying attention and that sort of thing. And but these are. Deals where these kids have got, the details of how things were. And these two, which are we talking about? We're talking about Brian Hammond.
Yes. You're talking about
James Leininger.
Yeah, Leininger. That was previously
Leininger,
Houston.
Yeah. Anyway, this Jim Tucker, who is a child psychiatrist, investigated this guy, and another guy we're going to talk about, okay?
We watched the same two.
Did we? Okay.
Yes, we did.
Well, those were the only two that I found were credible. They had last names.
Mm-hmm.
They were still amongst the living. The details weren't sketchy. It wasn't put together with AI or anything. These cases I thought were legit. But this James Tucker, documented that James made specific claims about the crash before his parents discovered the details about James Houston Jr., who he claims that's who he was.
Yeah.
Okay. Tucker verified Leininger's statements matched the file of James Houston Jr., a pilot from Pennsylvania killed in 1945. He recalled the Corsair having flat tires a lot. Says his plane took off at Natoma Bay. Also identified a character by the name of Jack Larson, I guess, was also there when the Houston craft went down. Specifically identified where he was shot down and he was hit head on. Okay, so these details coming from a little kid are astounding. So then I thought, well, there's got to be a guy out there that's going to disprove this, and sure enough, there was. Okay, and so I listened to him, and I was going to write the notes down, but honestly, his belief was far less credible than what this kid was saying. So, he just didn't, I couldn't come up with anything
I think, and I know that we've got the video we just played, and we're about to play another one, whether it's after commercial break or next. But one vivid story that really sticks out in my mind, you brought up something really cool. One of my favorite Super Bowl commercials was the really young kids loving and hugging each other. The point is you said, when you're born, as a kid, you just don't lie. That is something that is taught, just like hate. Hate is taught. It's not just something, that they know. So where am I going at with this? There was a reincarnation story that really intrigued me where the child, a female child, when she was just able to talk, she was talking fluently to the extent where she was telling her parents, I've been murdered. So could you imagine being a parent and your child's telling you that you're murdered, right?
Yeah.
But going back to what they say about most of these isolated incidences are children, she started describing the school, the location.
Oh, yeah. I remember reading that one.
So, and the parents weren't the one. They brought in a professional. Again, I didn't bring names. But he was so intrigued with it that he traveled to this location, found the school, found the way that they were dressed. Everything was a T. And then they arrested. Yeah. It led further to where they arrested the guy who...
The guy admitted it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, man, I got goosebumps.
I know.
So, again, as adults and with today's technology, AI, we could tell stories to where we say it so much, we believe it to convince others. But again, when we're talking about children aren't taught.
I mean, you're talking about, kids between the ages of 2 and maybe 7 years old. Okay.
Yeah.
That's I mean, and usually people are very good at finding out if someone's lying.
Well,
okay. I always say I could never be a criminal because I know that if I thought, well, I can fool these guys, they bring in, interrogate you, there's no way. They're going to find you out, And some of it, like I said, this James Leininger, the guy that was refuting what he was saying, didn't have anything credible. I swear he did not have a thing credible that he could throw at this guy. And, but don't we find those kind of people in life? Anytime there's something that is, can't be explained, we get somebody like, I think we talked about Philip Glass back in the 70s that just denied every UFO encounter. And to the point where I thought that he was paid by the government to just, squash everything.
Well, isn't that society today, though?
Oh, my God.
Don't get me wrong. I will always tell everybody on any episode we speak of, I value and respect their opinion. But you know what? With that same breath, respect mine also. But that is the world that we live in today, that people would rather hear dirt and negativity. That draws attention more than, honest, humble truth.
Yeah.
So
and I would say that a lot of these naysayers out there, they don't have a lot of times they don't have anything in their Easter basket either with anything to refute. I mean, I was thinking while we were talking about the back when my mom was, the doctor said she's not going to live.
I remember this.
And he was wrong.
Yeah.
And so when when this thing started to reverse, he didn't know what to say, and we were calling.
I sure hope he became a believer after that.
Well, but here's what's interesting about it. He said, I'm a Christian too. So I don't know how you thread that needle, saying you're going to die. I mean, and then wrong. But
because I recall that there wasn't a percentage. This was.
Yeah, there was not. It was nothing. It was like, well, she's not going to make it. And I thought, how do you know that? You had just that little bit of like 1% of hope. Well, maybe she'll make it. That's the only thing I could go on.
And guys, what Troy's referring to, we had a podcast roughly about a month ago where he brought his mom and dad on the podcast and just getting you caught up to speed. What a miracle, what a beautiful story. Troy's referring to the doctor who prepared his dad that your wife's going to die. There wasn't given a percentage or anything. And here's what we're speaking of, that his mom made full recovery, where we were blessed to have her presence in the studio and to share her story. So, while we're on that topic, Troy, I did pull my own little personal video. So if it's okay, here's what I'd like to do. For some of you that are watching us and you're not really sure reincarnation, okay, it is something that you really have to understand what the word means, some of the stories we're talking about. But if you're confused about the topic, we're using the word Christian. So let me bring this up. If we're using the word Christian, like Troy brought up, where is that in the Bible? Or is it a deja vu moment? When I was doing my due diligence, I came across a guy, and if you thought you were confused, I'm going to play a video for you right now. I want you to listen. Then we'll go to a commercial break, and you can come back and tell me if you're just as confused as I am now about reincarnation. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Here we go.
There is no such thing exactly, literally, as
The sound bed.
reincarnation.
We'll go back. We'll work on that sound during commercial break, but yeah, it's worth watching. We'll have to get to that. All right, we ready to go to a commercial?
Yep.
All right, here we go.
At Marquette Catholic High School, tradition is more than a word. It's a way of life. From championship athletics to community service, from lifelong friendships to faith-filled values, Marquette students carry a legacy of excellence. Together, we build a stronger community on the field, in the classroom, and beyond. Marquette Catholic, where tradition meets tomorrow. Visit MarquetteCatholic.org and see why Marquette is the right choice for your family.
You won't find a better health club than Nautilus Fitness Center. More cardio, more free weights and equipment, more classes, a swimming pool, and more. If you're serious about your health and want to make a change, then stop thinking about it and visit Nautilus Fitness Center on Industrial Drive in Alton. Don't fall for the hype you get from the other health clubs. Nautilus is the Riverbend's premier health club. Has been for years and will be for years to come. Get to Nautilus Fitness Center and get started on a healthier new you.
This kind of goes with the topic, right? Somewhere in time. I don't even want to turn it off. I want you to kind of go into the new Troy. Remember the new Troy's working on this project right now. Like I was just waiting for you to go into full effect there, dude. You had me like kick back on my. I'm just ready to whiten on by the lake, you know.
Did you get that guy?
I didn't get it, so we're not gonna take away from
Before
it.
I forget.
Yes.
I want to talk about people. I was looking up signs that you know you've lived a past life. Okay.
Okay.
And I couldn't really find anything that was credible. I mean, these things that they were talking about, you say, "Oh yeah, I've been like that," or "Oh yeah, I've been like that." So I didn't bring that to the deal though. But one thing I have noticed in some of these things is that they've died violently or prematurely. Okay. Now,
Well, I just want to interrupt real fast.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about 3 stories before I knew what you were going to bring to the table. All 3 stories we talked about were violent.
yeah, I
A
mean,
kamikaze, a pilot who was shot, and the girl who was murdered.
yeah, that seems to be a thing now. There are people out there like my grandma. She always had this gigantic fear of swimming, and I don't know why. She wouldn't go near the water. She was freaked out about it, and but nothing happened. I mean, she didn't drown or nothing, you know. I mean, but she had this fear of the water. Now I don't want to tell you what my fear is because I believe in you can manifest things. Okay. But Richie Valens, you know, he died.
Yeah.
Buddy Holly and Big Barbara Richardson. I was 59. He always talked about his fear of being in a plane crash. You know.
Well,
And
that was well known.
yeah. Now, But the manifestation, the reason I don't bring up what I fear is because the story goes, because I love Waylon Jennings. He gave up his seat for another member of Buddy Holly's crew or whatever, the band. And so Waylon had to get off the plane and take a bus. And before he, I guess the words went back and forth were with Buddy Holly and Waylon. Buddy Holly says, I hope your bus, breaks down. And Waylon says, I hope your plane crashes.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, it haunted him the rest of his life. Did you know that?
I was not familiar with that because I didn't want to be a smart aleck by saying that was probably the best bus ride he ever took. But I was not familiar with them both. Now, of course, great friends, hey, I wish the bus, and we do that all the time.
But, this fear of the plane crash, I mean, did Richie Valens live a prior life and die from a plane crash? These things you seem to remember, if you've lived in a past life.
Sure.
I'd like to tell you what my fear is, but I'm not.
No, don't, because two things will happen. One, we don't want it to manifest.
No.
And two, the guy sitting across the table, he's a practical joker, and you don't want to let me in on that. So I respect that, Troy.
Anyway, so we have another video.
Yes, I've got it ready. Let me get this split screen here. See if I can get this mouse to work a little bit more in my favor tonight as it goes. If not, I got to keep talking here on the microphone, and here we go.
Was Marty Martin, a little-known actor and talent agent from the 1930s. At first, children say creepy things. When Ryan Hammonds, a young boy from Oklahoma, began having vivid dreams at 4 years old, he insisted he had once been a film actor. He described scenes from old Hollywood with eerie accuracy, speaking of grand movie sets, glamorous parties, and an unfamiliar life that felt all too real. One day, he pointed to an old photograph in a book and said, "That was me." The man in the photo was Marty Martin, a little-known actor and talent agent from the 1930s. At first, his parents were skeptical, dismissing his claims as wild childhood imagination. But Ryan's memories only grew more detailed and specific. He spoke about a green car he used to drive, the type of house he lived in, and stories about his other family. Every word carried a weight that unsettled his parents. They decided to investigate, piecing together fragments of Ryan's stories with whatever information they could find. For the full story and more creepy tales.
That's, again, another thing you talk about, the vividness of the stories.
Yeah, this Ryan Hammonds, he holds the record for the number of memories of a previous life before the previous person was identified. Okay, so he had all these, and here's what's interesting about this guy. This guy, he was a late speaker due to adenoids. Okay, he literally couldn't talk. When he did, though, when he was finally able to talk, his first comments concerned 3 adopted sons to whom he, Marty Martin, had given his name and said he was from Hollywood. So this kid knew about this Marty Martin's one of his marriages where he adopted these 3 boys.
And I actually like this testimony a little bit stronger because on the last one, the more research I was doing, you were talking about how this one has so many documented things prior to knowing who it was. Well, the Leininger Houston, when we were just speaking of, there was a lot of people going against that story because then they started thinking as time went on, the parents were provoking some of the stories. So I actually like this one. I don't want to use the word accolades, but it definitely has more documentation prior to them even saying who I was in my previous life.
The one you're talking about, the Leininger.
Yeah, Houston.
There was actually a special, I believe it was ABC News, where they interviewed the parents, because I heard the same flack. Well, I can't even.
But
remember.
that's what
But
keyboard
I'm
warriors
saying is,
are today.
I watched this deal for 20 minutes. I watched this interview. I mean, they've got to be the best actors in the world. I'm serious.
Yeah.
It's on YouTube. I totally believe them. But this Ryan Hammonds, 55 details about the man he used to be, who died 40 years before he was born, okay? 55 verified details. This Tucker's research, this child psychiatrist, has determined some things. The median age at the time of death on these people that have died is about 28.
Which is, I'd say 20, yeah.
Now, this Ryan Hamlin's, his peak memories came at 4 years of age. Most children having these memories are between 2 and 6, and the memories fade after that. The median time between the remembered death and the next birth is 16 months. Okay? 60% of those claiming memories are male. 70% claim they died in a violent or unnatural death. 90% say we're the same sex in previous life. Okay? Tucker notes that Max Planck, the father of quantum mechanics, supports a theory that our material world is derived from consciousness, not the other way around. Consciousness first. The consciousness does not depend on our brain to exist and can move on when the brain stops, perhaps to another brain or another life. Now, this is an interesting component of what we're talking about, okay? And they got into some quantum mechanics about how this happens. If it was the slit test of the light, and if it's observed, it acts one way, and if it's not, it acts a different way. But I understood what he was saying a little bit, you know. So I thought, I'm not going to be able to just say this and remember this. So I'm going to write down what my thoughts were about the fact that this father of quantum mechanics supports the theory that our material world is derived from consciousness. Consciousness first, okay? And does not depend on our brain for it to exist, and can move on when the brain stops, perhaps to another brain or another life. So I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking, okay, I'm starting to figure a little bit out what he's saying. So I wrote this down because I always say you've heard me say we're all watching the same movie.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I understand that the movie isn't dependent on observation. It can keep playing unobserved in a movie house. If we leave the movie house for a time and come back later, the movie will have moved on to a different part. Yet I can recall the previous scenes, although never being able to relive the previous scenes because of a different, continuously rolling timestamp. But I am conscious of all events. Those remain intact. Okay, so the fact that the consciousness is what guides our physical world, you know, that's a big statement, you know, because then it allows for all kinds of things. The idea of God. I mean, you know, I mean, there's all kinds of things you could talk about once you figure that out. Now, the problem with what we're discussing is there's not an agreed on theory about reincarnation to even try to prove it. There's not a theory to try to prove it.
So I was listening to you talk, and if you remember before the commercial, I wanted to play a video. We struggled with it, but the more you talked, I said we have to play this video because the thought, what you were, I'm just going to stop rambling. Let me pull the screen up here because this is pretty intense. At first, I was just like blowing this off. I'm not going to play it. But again, the more you talked, I think we need to see this. Let's hear his explanation. Are you ready?
Yeah.
There is no such thing exactly, literally, as reincarnation. It is multiple simultaneous incarnations all existing at the same time. So you are always you. You never become another version. Another version, another life is them. But you both coexist and are connected to the same, what might euphemistically be called, oversoul. Each of those lives is a simultaneously coexisting extension of the same oversoul. You are one extension, Another life is another extension, and both lives exist as discrete and distinct persons coexisting at the same time with their own experience of themselves as the you that you were talking about.
I wanted to play that because when you started talking about we're all watching the same movie, that's what kind of made me just think of playing that.
Well, I think what he's, I mean, I don't know. It sounds like what he's saying is that we are always the same soul. We just move around different parts of the playground.
So in essence, that would make sense if you're reborn, reincarnated.
Right.
You have that soul that, well, I tell you what, man, that it started out as I don't know what's going on here to hearing yours and then listening to him. Because at first I'm like, who is this guy?
Yeah, I mean, you could start talking about things like, string theory and, I've read where people think that, everything's like a cube, we're different levels. And, so this ties in relatively well with what he's saying and for the fact that it could very well work.
Well, that's why I took it more serious after listening to, at first when I listened to it, going to the commercial, I was going to say, guys, if you thought you were confused now, listen to him. But when you started speaking, it started adding up to what he was sharing.
It's, when I was researching this about this Max Planck, the father of quantum mechanics, that he supported a theory that our world is derived from consciousness. Okay? Consciousness first, right? So I got thinking, well, does that mean we all observe the Big Bang? Maybe the Big Bang isn't credible at this point then, if we believe, consciousness came first. So it's just, this is an interesting thing because, I got to be honest with you. I'm a thinker, and I'm not that smart at all. But things do intrigue me. And, did you ever see that movie, Where the Red Fern Grows? Did you ever see that? Or Old Yeller? I love dogs.
Old Yeller,
okay?
yeah.
And I know there's people out there that love the dogs too. But I am a huge dog lover. And you know what? Dogs, they don't live very long. So they deserve a spot on the bed, a spot on the couch. They deserve treats. They deserve to be taken places. They deserve to be loved on because their time is short.
Bro, in my wife's mother's ring, we have Marley's birthstone in it.
Do you?
So you want to talk about deserving that spot on the bed and the couch, the 80-pound lap dog, pit bull,
What they give you back is this intangible happiness,
Unconditional love.
Yeah. So I don't know how we got off on that.
Well, actually, let me jump in real fast, whether it be deja vu or not. When you talk about dogs and you were talking about movies, I don't recall the movie, but Reincarnation, wasn't there a dog movie within the last 10 years where the dog had passed and it lived, and then it came back to the farmhouse?
Like he kept recurring. It was a different dog, but it was always the same dog. And It kept coming back and helping people out.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think dogs sometimes pick, the other dog you get. I know that sounds crazy.
No, it goes better than the first 5 minutes of your show. If you're going to get reincarnated, am I getting stuck? So.
No,
here we go. There's a dog's life.
Show on dogs.
There's a dog's life. Yeah.
My dog, when I was studying today, she never left my side. She was on the chair with me. I had to put everything down and tell her how good she was and get a treat and go to the bathroom. She'd get right back on. So they're great. But I know this. I think it was Hinduism or Buddhism.
Both. My studies.
I think they talk about this happens in animal life too. That it can. These different levels and so forth. But I don't know. This whole reincarnation intrigues me because, and I didn't want to approach it really with a bunch of science and stuff because I've been told that I'm an old soul, and I don't know where that came from. I think people identify other people kind of something that's like a vapor or a mist or something, and they and you can tell sometimes, if someone is like an older soul, I probably am like that because of my grandpa. But I can tell you, somewhere in my late 20s, I went from enjoying the music of the day and so forth to wandering back into time. Okay. The culture. And I don't know what, I mean, let's face it, when I was born in 63. You heard about things like Helter Skelter, Charles Manson, JFK, and things. So, I mean, certain things mold your brain, but I remember one day they had just gotten rid of the radio station that I loved, KXOK, and I turned it on to Worth Radio, and they played the standards, and they played ballads and stuff from the 50s and 60s, and I mean, it was like I had never drank in that kind of music before in my life. That was it. And to this day, that's my wheelhouse.
I know it is.
So,
hence the people who are watching this podcast tonight, what's the first song we played? Somewhere in Time. Right, there we go.
But I'm just saying, I don't know if I lived before or not, but I can tell you that that's where I resonate. That's where I want to go back to. I want to go back to those times, even though maybe I didn't live them. But that's where I am comfortable. And we're talking about even like in the 40s. I mean, I love all of that. I just love all of that. So, did I live before and die in a horrific fashion? Maybe I did. I don't know.
I'm glad you asked yourself that question, because that's what I was going to ask our listeners. They're hearing our topic, reincarnation. Have any of them ever, thought? Because here's what I find different in today's world. You are an old soul. I've known you 25 years, easy.
Oh, more than that.
Okay, so
since '96, I think.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, apologize. But ever since I've known you, this is how you've always been. And being an old soul, I don't think is bad, because even on our podcast, we've played some clips, and a lot of those clips have been not just nostalgia, but they've just been pure. Back in the good old days, if somebody passed away, we mourn them. And today, 2026, someone passes away and it's back to work tomorrow. So it goes back to the question I was going to ask. I don't think, unless people are truly listening to us tonight and we're resonating with them, do they ever pause to take time for themselves, to think about themselves? Because I don't know if anybody would ever if they're not an old soul, hey, okay, I'm listening to them guys, let me go to Facebook, let me creep TikTok. We live in such a fast-paced, distraction, squirrel-type lifestyle. So your old soul, I'm jealous, but because when I think of an old soul, I believe in a person who has appreciation for nostalgia, appreciation for how life was lived. Today, we're so caught up in such a fast pace, unless you're somebody who truly keeps experiencing, I don't want to confuse the two, reincarnation, deja vu, but like you talked about your grandma who was always afraid of the water. Why was she afraid of the water? Was it a phobia, or was it?
Yeah.
So that's what I see different about today. People might not take this topic serious because they're so consumed in such a, fast pace.
Man, I mean, I know every generation that gets older, they talk about the generation coming up, and I try not to be that kind of a guy, because I know there's a lot of good kids out there.
Absolutely.
Know there are some good kids out there. I mean, look at our military. It's still, there's no draft, and they're not looking for. I mean, they're full capacity. I mean, there's some great kids.
Patriotism.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just think that life is devaluated now to the point where you start to believe that maybe your life doesn't matter, and you're not painting with rich colors. You're nothing matters, and no one writes anymore. No one visits and has a genuine belly laugh with someone anymore. It's always a snide, crass, quick thrill, and I don't understand it at all. I grew up a little bit. I remember a little bit of the '60s. Okay. And I remember this. Now, not to bore you, but there was a culture clash going on. There really was. I mean, if you, and my favorite show is Andy Griffith, as you know, but that is the life that was going on when I would go to Root House and see my grandparents. Now, in 1967, at the Haight-Ashbury district out there in San Francisco, it was a totally different thing, and it was headed our way, but we didn't know about it. I mean, so
different culture.
Yeah, but it came in and it took. I'd like to do a show sometime about the counterculture that came out of California in the '60s and how it permeated everything in this country.
Well, that's why I wondered. You brought up Andy Griffith. Wasn't that what we played in one of our podcasts not too long ago?
Man in a Hurry, my favorite.
Right. So isn't that what both you and I were just talking about? To where, hey, I'm in a hurry. I need my car fixed, and then he just took a moment, leaned up against the podium. Right, they were playing the guitar, singing, and then he just started singing along. And that's what happens when we pause for ourselves. Yeah. That's exactly what we're speaking of.
Well, I tell you what, this idea of reincarnation, I've thought about it because I think about how many. Now, here's something a lot of people may not think about. Maybe when you get older, you do, but I think about all the hurt and pain of like World War II, those people, they went off to fight and they maybe had loved ones here and young girlfriends and fiancés or whatever, and they go over and they get killed. Think about that. Think about what that did. Okay, I lost 2 great uncles in World War II, Think about all that pain. How do you deal with that? So I'm thinking, well, how do you make that right, God? How do you make that right? And the only way you can make that right is if you're going to see those people again, right? But you're going to have to get through junior high, high school, college to figure out all these things about life to where when you enter heaven, because you're not supposed to, no sin is supposed to come into heaven. Am I right? So when you walk in those doors, you are clean. You have figured out. You are no longer one of the dregs of society. Now you've got everything figured out. You're selfless. You're sympathetic. You love unconditionally. All the things that Jesus was, right?
Pearly gates, baby.
And you will get to see those people again. I believe it. That is the only thing I think those people who went through that misery have to hang their hopes on, is that they will see those people again. And I feel sorry for people that don't believe in anything like we're talking about, that maybe, this sort of thing is real, that they just have this stark, horrible existence where they don't believe in anything.
Well, I only have this grin a little bit because for those that don't know, I have a 2 p.m. podcast called You're Beautiful. And that was actually part of the topic today, how we live this flesh life right now. But a lot of people aren't educated to know there's greater that lies ahead, So I think you're absolutely right. And I do think a lot of what we speak about does happen when you get older. Because, again, right now it's life in the fast lane.
Some of these famous past lifers, I thought was interesting. I'm a big George C. Scott fan. Did you ever see the movie Patton?
Yeah.
There's a part in that movie where he says that he has been there before. He's been in this battlefield before. He was a guy that believed that has been reincarnated and has been several warriors. Shirley MacLaine is another one, obviously. Never was a big fan of hers, but she believed that she's been a past lifer. Tina Turner believed that she in another life was a queen in Egypt. Did you know that?
I didn't.
Yeah,
but I do find it very interesting.
Tina Turner was great.
Yes.
Other believers in reincarnation are John Travolta, Tom Cruise, George Harrison, William Burroughs, Leonard Cohen. Now, these 3 that I'm going to tell you are interesting to me because these guys, like I've told you.
Well, is one of 3 of them that you're going to speak of Tom Cruise?
No.
Okay.
I'm talking about Pythagoras.
Oh, okay.
Pythagorean theorem, right? Interesting. He went to Egypt, studied all these things, all this math and all these things he was told. He lost them on the way back to Greece. So the only thing he brought back was what was in his head. Okay, this is a little sidebar trivia. Socrates and Pluto. Socrates gave Pluto the definition of what a man was, and we talked about that. Bipedal with broad, featherless and broad nails. And I told you that he was upped by someone who was a street guy that came in and put a plucked chicken on his table and said, "This is your definition of man." So, what point is, we're not all that smart, okay? Because he upped Socrates and Plato. But Pythagoras, Socrates, and Plato all believed in previous lives. So I just thought that was interesting because those guys weren't stupid, you know.
No, well, one of the reasons why I wanted to bring up when I singled out Tom Cruise was Scientology.
Yeah, I know. And well, so, I mean, John Travolta's the same way, you know. I mean, the Scientology, which we talked about, L. Ron Hubbard, or is that Dianetics? But they're all tied back to, it goes back to Aleister Crowley.
Oh, man. I'm never going to forget that. You educated me on that podcast.
Oh, I'll tell you what, we could have another show on
Was that, before you speak, and I definitely know who he is and what he stood for, I'm just trying to remember what our topic was at the time. And was that the Antichrist or what? We were talking about something deep. Satanic. Yeah. You know what? I think it was cults.
Cults?
It was cults.
Okay.
We were on cults, yeah.
Crowley is even attached, believe it or not, to our NASA space program. I can get into that on another show.
That'd be another podcast.
The NASA, there's some creepy things with NASA. Yeah. Maybe we can talk. And maybe we'll do a bits show where we talk a little bit about it, and then we'll go to another little bit.
Okay.
Okay. But I'm telling you, NASA's interesting. And it's also got a creepy edge to it.
Well, I definitely want to hear about it.
Yeah.
I think we're getting to the tail end of the show. We still have a little bit of time. I do want to apologize to our listeners where tonight I thought we were going to have our medium on, but I confused the 12th of March with the 12th of February, which both days fall on a Thursday. So I know that will be quite interesting. I think another thing that we're going to do a quick follow-up, something we've never done before, but we've recently talked about the Epstein files, where they've recently got released, and I think we're going to be bringing that back up soon. Yeah. And what made me spark that, NASA's not in there, but when you just started saying edgy and some things that, I think this next Epstein file is now that files have been released at the general public. But now, don't get me wrong, there's still trillions of redactions and still, but there is a lot to be heard.
Yeah, there is. There is, and I do have some takes on it. I read one part of it.
I know we're getting off topic here. I apologize.
One of the things that came out was that Joe Biden had been assassinated by a firing squad, and they had a body double was brought in.
So the body double part has been spoke of a while, but the reason why I went ahead and brought back up the Epstein files, and again, folks, I know we're wandering off of reincarnation here. I was just kind of bringing up what's in the pipes to come, But when you brought up that guy's name that I told you has me free, yeah. So when we're not going to talk about it now, but what you spoke of this individual is the very similarities that are being talked about the recent Epstein files being released.
Trust me, they know who Crowley is.
Okay.
And man, the higher ups, like I told you last time, it's all sex for power and it's defilement. Okay. I remember reading a book called The Book of Enoch, and what happened in some of these places with children and out in the open in front of, what these parents would do in front of their kids. It is just unbelievable.
We're going to save that. We only got a few minutes left. We got a few minutes left, so let's do an outro on reincarnation. I know where you stand and what have you. Did you have any ending closures?
Yeah, I have to believe that I believe there has to be hope at the end of this world, of this life, what we do, Do I believe you have to graduate and go through the levels? Yeah, I think you do. Yeah, to be forgiven in life, and then you find out you're not forgiven, you only had one life to live, and you're going to go to hell. I have a logically, I just have an aversion to that. I just have a hard time with that. You know, the dogma out there in modern Christianity nowadays, you know, they talk about hell a lot, and I just think that God is a fan, kind of like your grandpa, that when you die, you get to sit on his lap and you get to tell him about the wonderful gift that he gave you. And he wants to hear everything that you loved about it. A warm, loving God.
Love this.
So that's my take, okay? And so you have to believe that you're going to see these people again. You have to believe it, because if you don't, nothing matters in this life. If you don't believe that, I know I'm probably going to get some bows and arrows and slings, but...
Not necessarily, not when we speak of... Everybody's entitled to their opinion. You know, last week we had the topic of ICE, okay? And how sensitive of a topic as that was, what we need to learn...
I said that one out because it was too sensitive.
Well, what we need to learn... Well, here, you know, let's do something that's very relatable. I know we only got a couple minutes, but the Super Bowl halftime show, okay? There's my analogy. Some people loved it, some people hated it.
I'd like to know who loved that.
Well, it's on Facebook. But anyways, what I'm getting at is... People lose friendships over politics, right? Now people are losing friendships over the halftime show. But going back to ICE, what I had put up there, Troy, our particular podcast is an entertainment podcast where we could respect the views of what people want to say, but you got to keep it classy. You know, if people want to get on there, they're entitled to.
Do you respect an idiot?
I pray for an idiot, if that's a better way to respond.
Well, but do you respect his idiocy?
I don't respect it when it's coming right in front of my face and it's disrespectful.
I mean, you know, I just love blanket that everyone seems to have. It's like, we can't even call out evil anymore because we're just supposed to love
But we
evil.
do. We do. We call it out. That's what I call keyboard
I don't
warriors.
See that anymore. I just see, we're just supposed to, you know, and I don't see where you can call out evil anymore. It's like the onus is on us to just put up with it and just love, okay? Now that halftime show, my girlfriend wanted to watch it. So I'm looking at books, I'm looking at my phone. I understand that was done in Puerto Rican or something, and that the words were vile and vulgar and awful, okay?
Well, for me, I can't comprehend.
Now, Roger Goodell, I believe, is a towel boy for the NFL, okay? I think he's doing things to save his job, not what's good for the NFL. So... I mean, I don't want to go for a rant, but I'm just saying.
Well, I kind of like it, you know, even though we're on reincarnation, I kind of like this. So we are definitely going to have to, you know what? I like what you were talking about for another show. Why don't we just talk about halftime? Let's talk about Crowley. Let's talk about, you know, instead of just like one thing, let's get a powwow in here.
Let's do that because
I'm loving this. Let's go. Can you just flex for the cameras?
I'm not doing that.
That's why I would never let him tell me his fear, because if I pull the brink, I could see the wrath right there. Hey, I want to tell everybody, thanks for, tonight was a little different. What I do love about tonight was just an open, honest conversation about reincarnation. We truly like to hear from you. If you don't want to comment on Facebook because you don't want your name tied to it, trust on RiverBender@gmail.com. Not only share that with us, but share with us what topics would you like us to discuss. Sound good?